Hi.
I
We're matching. We're matching with our t-shirt.
know, look, I've got my Team Humanity t-shirt on.
From across the pond. I love it. I could tell right away. I'm like, oh, she's wearing the t-shirt.
I love this color.
Yeah, it is pretty, isn't it? I mean, especially what it represents. And I think in general, it's a pretty color. And what's funny, I live in Minnesota, and the Vikings are, how we're big in American football here in the US, and the Vikings are purple. And then also Prince, the singer Prince, Purple Rain is from Minnesota. So he's purple too. And so, yeah, I feel like purple fits.
And you chose purple because it combines blue and red.
Yeah, exactly. You know what? It was before I went to DC for the first time. And they were talking about making shirts for the event in November 2nd, 2021. And they were talking about making red shirts. And I, happen to have voted Democrat my whole life. So blue, would be the color that I was more associated with. And I'm like, it's not red or blue. Like, it's really not. Our issues are not like people who are getting hurt from both sides. And it's really humanity issue. So that's when I thought, like, let's make them purple. And everybody agreed quickly on our little chat on Facebook. And then I first did a speech here in Minnesota and wore purple head to toe. I happen to have purple jeans and a purple winter coat and purple coats. So yeah, I definitely think, I mean, I know it doesn't apply to other countries that don't have like the Republican and Democrat, but I do think humanity applies to all countries, right? Like, it's, again, those who are injured were just from all different walks of life. And I mean, and frankly, anyone who experienced the pandemic, which every single living human being did, had some level of trauma, some level of like hurt and pain. And as a human to human, you can look at that person, even if your pain is different than their pain. Like, we know each other's pain because we're experiencing similar things, but to have more empathy for those people who maybe lost a loved one to COVID, or there are many, or lost a job because their business shut down, or because they were forced to get a vaccine, or lost loved ones because they wanted to get vaccines and their loved ones didn't. And there's just so many ways that people were traumatized and hurt by this thing. So why not pull together and just see each other's pain and try and support each other in that? It seems like an easy concept, right?
Yeah, I agree. And you said you talked a little bit about your speech there, the first speech you ever did. Did you, I mean, I want to talk about censorship with you.
Yeah.
For obvious reasons. We'll come to that in a
Yeah.
minute. But did you ever think that you would have to be standing giving public speeches like you are?
No.
In your life? Have you done it before? Have you ever?
At work, for sure, just to groups at work, but not regarding work-related banking things, not. And I was a teacher actually right out of college, so that's standing in front of a classroom of little people, but no, not this way. And that very first speech too, I almost didn't do it because I was literally afraid. I'm like, that's going to be a crowd of people who think differently than me. I got the shot. Maybe they hate me because I got the shot. And we've gotten to hate online, right? For like speaking out on both sides. So I was a little afraid, but I just thought, I got to do this. I got to make sure people know, like, it had just come out that the kids' vaccines. And I thought, well, I know my story is not getting out there, and I'd be really worried about a child getting this vaccine, knowing again at the time that kids weren't dying as much from COVID. So it just seemed like a fair message to get out there. And then the message of unity, like, hey, let's not be divided by if you're wearing your mask right or not wearing your mask right. Like, there's just so much division. And I also live in Minnesota, where George Floyd, I grew up, you know, a couple blocks, not blocks, miles, a couple miles away from where George Floyd died. And, you know, there's just been so much division. And I just don't, yeah, I just really believe we can stand in the middle despite our differences. And so, you know, I felt called to speak out, and I was already planning on going to Washington, D.C. to speak on Senator Ron Johnson's panel for the vaccine injured. And I thought, well, this will be good practice. I'll just do this. And it was so
yeah, but that's
loving.
not a sentence that a lot of people ever say. You know, I was I did a warm-up gig in front of, you know, several hundred or several thousand people.
Thousands.
Go and
Yeah,
speak
there were
in Washington
thousands.
after.
Yeah, you know, and like even I went to DC to sit on the panel like this. Like, no, I've never been political. Like, my family, my dad was a Democrat, or my dad was a Republican, my mom's a Democrat, and, you know, politics just weren't a big part of our family. They loved each other despite their different political views. And so it just, yeah, it is weird. It is weird, isn't it? Like, how much
It's quite
public
surreal,
speaking.
isn't it? It's quite surreal being put in that
Yeah.
position when you've never had to before. You're suddenly speaking publicly, and it's mainly due to censorship, isn't it? Because we've all been, anyone that wants to speak about this online or you know, we haven't been allowed to talk to the press. We haven't been allowed to talk on, you know, on camera, in mainstream media. And so therefore you find yourself speaking publicly at these types of things. And it's for someone that's never done it before, I found it quite scary.
Right. Right. And your system's already sort of out of whack, right? And then it's your autonomic nervous system kind of kicks in when you're speaking. So it takes a toll too, right? I mean, I think you are beautifully spoken and eloquent in the writing that you do in the groups, like, and you're a leader for your community, and it's just so important. I know a lot of people don't want to do it, and I would never pressure anyone who's injured to do anything that they think might set them back. Like, if they think it will help them on their journey, or they feel super called to do it or attend something, great. But it's hard. You're straight up right. Like, it's challenging. Do you remember the first time you did your first
and when I set up the group, when I first set up the group, it became apparent within a few months that we needed someone to lead it, right? Because when you've got a group of people, you need someone at the head of it going, right, we need to do this now. This is how we're going to organize this. And Caroline, to me, is a natural leader, but she was like, no, I don't want to do this. I've done this before. I've done it before. I want to be there next to you. I want you to do it. I think you should do it. And I was like, no, for ages. I was saying to them, no, I don't feel comfortable with leading anything at the moment. And then, you know, over time, it became apparent that I'd just become like naturally the leader. And I was just like, oh, for God's sake, I'll do it then. But yeah, it wasn't something that I immediately chose to do. It's kind of, it makes me feel a little bit uncomfortable being quite public, it did make me feel. It doesn't now. I feel comfortable now. But I was lucky to have Caroline kind of helping me along the way. And, you know, she's done a lot of public speaking in the past for other things and for this. So she's really helped me with my confidence and doing things like that. And she's really, even though she says she's not organised because she's injured, she is very well organised. I mean,
she's writing, you know, books, so I feel
like, I mean, God knows what she'd be like on full steam.
Right. I think that's all of us, to be honest with you. I kind of get the feeling that the majority of us were sort of big doers and full steam ahead kind of people. Definitely. Before this happened to us. So yeah. So the censorship, because I know you probably can't talk much about this, but you are
going to court, aren't you, at the moment?
Yeah. Yeah, I'm part of the 6 of us representing all the injured. And really, I know there's been a little discord among the injured, and I really hope that people understand we're simply representing everyone who's been censored on behalf of these different social media platforms, that a lot of them stem from here in the United States. And so we're literally, I mean, we're suing for $1 each, just really, so it's not like we're going to become millionaires off this. What we're hoping to become is a light to the truth of how we should still be able to have our First Amendment rights to freedom of speech. Like, that's what our Constitution says. And just I think Robert F. Kennedy Jr. recently said, like, nothing good ever comes from when people are censored. And it's true. It doesn't make sense to censor our uncomfortable truths. So, I'm definitely very proud to be a part of that. But again, only representing everybody. Like, proud for all of us to finally have gotten a law firm that's willing to stand up for us and get this into court. So we'll see where it goes. I know I know not to hold my breath at this point. Like, so many different things just seem to be taking forever. And I'm pretty tired at this point. I don't know about you, but we've been going for 2 years now. My body's still trying really hard to heal. And I need to slow it up a bit in order to actually get my body to heal. But so many other people, I think, are stepping up and out front. And I think that helps too. I think people feel more comfortable, right, when they're seeing other people do it. And unfortunately, the crowd of injured is getting bigger and bigger, and we're finding each other more. But yeah, the censorship piece is so painful when you hear of people committing suicide too. And that is, having experienced this and I felt alone. I got lucky. I randomly met Christy here in Minnesota, very randomly and serendipitously, that like we kind of clung to each other before I then met other people online. But and then I could see her in real life, right? Which I think in real life is very powerful. IRL, as my teenagers say.
Yeah.
Yeah. So yeah, I think it's so hard not to, or to feel what we're feeling, these scary things, your heart not working, like my pupil not dilating properly, all of those things. It just feels so very lonely and scary. And because it's not in the media, for a while you think you're the only one. And then when you realize you're not, you're like, oh my gosh, this is wrong. And then when you get censored for sharing these horrible things that are happening to you, and your friends start saying, hey, your account's getting tagged and flagged, like I'm not telling the truth. They know I am, but they're like kind of thinking, oh, should she be quiet? And losing friends over trying to share your uncomfortable, painful truth. I don't.
And it all stems back from being censored by the media, doesn't it?
Absolutely, 100%. I think if we had been able to grow more quickly from not being censored, so many more people would have been helped out of the gate. Like, I knew to ask for a small fiber skin punch biopsy because of the symptoms that I was having. And, even though it took me a while to convince my neurologist to give me that test, he's like, I'm not convinced. I'm like, well, I am. Can you just try this test? I knew I could advocate for myself better because I was connected with other people going through the same thing.
And it all comes back to those connections, doesn't it, that you make with others?
Like we have, right? Like, there's no way I would have met you like any other way, probably, unless I came to London, or you came, or went to the UK, or you came here, and we ran into each other somehow and became fast friends. But yeah, I know you're the this YouTube channel, and our last conversation about kindness was censored. And when I listened to it, I'm like, we're not even bashing the vaccine at this point. Like, that word, I just said it, hopefully. Having to talk in code is just ridiculous. It's so wrong.
Yeah. Yeah. And that's what we've all had to do, haven't we? Because groups were getting shut down. So, you know, for anyone that isn't injured that's watching this, we have to talk in code in the groups, because certain words become flagged by fact checkers, and even if you're just describing, you know, how your migraine started after Pfizer, that sentence,
you said another word.
Yeah.
Pfizer. Yeah. I mean, these are just straight up facts and painful facts in our lives, and there's no one helping us at this point still. Like, not very much research being done here in the United States. I think Germany's far ahead of us, but we have to help each other. And that's what people do when they're in a marginalized group, which the vaccine injured are a marginalized group. Like, you band together and support one another. But then to be further treated as a criminal is just adding fuel to your.
And these are closed groups as well, so they're private. It's not like we're kind of discussing all of this right out in the open, kind of mainstream media. It is literally closed private Facebook groups where people are scared, frightened, in pain, and they just want to talk to other people going through the same thing and ask some questions about what's helping them, what's not helping them. You know, do you get this symptom? How do you relieve that symptom? It's not as if they're on there all ranting and raving about vaccines.
Right. And in theory, they should be able to do that too after even before what happened to them. So that's a good point. I mean, especially shutting down these different groups that are lifelines, frankly, lifelines to people. It's wrong. And us trying to spread team humanity on this YouTube channel, like, how can that be censored? It blows my mind.
I couldn't believe it. I couldn't believe that a YouTube video that was titled kindness was censored.
Yeah, maybe did we say the word Pfizer? I don't know. We probably did. So, I mean, this one will probably hit an algorithm that doesn't make it to a lot of people either, right? With the words that we're using. But I feel kind of done, like, using code. And I just feel like, I mean, I even kind of went offline. I'm barely on Facebook now. I just got so disenfranchised by that whole experience that I just don't feel like I just don't want to do it anymore. I don't want to speak in code.
No. Do you think it kind of isolates people even more, doesn't it? Because it makes them feel not part of society, because you know, they're censoring your truth, and from that you feel like you don't want to be in that space anymore.
100%. I mean, I think that's my exact experience. I might be, I don't know if Christy's online much. I think Sean is still, like, out of the people. I know Ernest is, Ernest is definitely full steam ahead, and Bree as well, still very much online, and Nikki as well. I think that's everybody from. Yes, I think I'm the one who's kind of dropped off, and maybe Christy as well. It's just disheartening. And I know that I can reach out to my community now individually, like, we can chat. I do feel like I'm missing out a little bit on conversations and things, but I guess for my own healing, that isolation of having to speak in code when I'm sharing my truth, even on my own personal with my own personal friends. It's just wrong.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think, you know, like you said, a lot of us have been going through this for 2 years plus now. So you have to learn how to kind of move on with your life, but at the same time, you're still advocating for people and still campaigning and doing all those things for other people. But there's a fine line, isn't there, between letting it become your life
Mhm.
and grabbing back some kind of, I don't want to say normality, because what is normal, but trying to grab back some other parts of your life that kind of fell off when you got ill.
Yeah. Yeah, you described that very well. I think for our families too, right? Our kids and spouses, it's just been a really, really long, exhausting journey for our bodies too. So even though it's like a new normal, like this is the new normal and what it is, and not knowing what the future is going to be, trying to be more in the now rather than what happened in the past and what may be in the future. Um, just
Yes,
trying
we're
to,
kind of forced to do that anyway, aren't we? Because we don't know from one day, even from 1 hour to the next, how we're going to feel. So we can't, we make plans and we decide that we're going to do that on Saturday or this on Monday, but it might get to Saturday morning and we're too unwell to do that. So
100%.
we have to kind of be happy being in the moment, in this minute, in this hour, because
Hmm.
the next hour we might be not well enough and we might have a migraine or we might have bad nerve pain or something, and you know, so we have to cancel plans quite a bit. So it kind of forces you to be really present in the moment, doesn't it?
It really does. My grandpa, when he was older, used to say, I don't plan anything more than 4 hours in advance. And I think that's true. Even thinking ahead to 4 hours, or like in the morning, if I'm starting to do something, I think, oh, I better slow up. I've got that thing later in the day. I better, go lie down. Or yeah, it's very true. Making those adjustments, those accommodations. I think so many of us have figured out these props or tools that we can use. For me, the walker is one of them. I met another woman who's been diagnosed with cryoglobulin anemia vasculitis, not from the vaccine. And she's been at it for 9 years. And she's like, I love my walker. Like, I have a great relationship with my walker. And I'm like, I don't love that I have to use it, but it sure shoot helps me get like around a store so I can sit down or go places, and just
Yeah.
having to accept some things you never would have expected that you would have to accept, and what you can do or can't do in a day is, I think acceptance helps, even though, there's a sadness and an anger to having to accept this as your new normal. Yeah.
Yeah, it's funny because I've got a walking stick seat. So it's a walking stick with a little seat on it.
Ah,
And
nice.
and at one point I did contemplate getting a wheelchair, just because, you know, if I'm having a not so good day, but I'm well enough to get out, I probably would find use for it. But
Mm-hmm.
I never got one. I got this walking stick seat, and the amount of times I've gone out of the house and left it at home thinking I'd be okay, and then got in a queue somewhere and I've been like, no, I can't queue, I'm gonna have to go home because I haven't got my stick seat. And it's just like this
Right.
complete denial. I look at the walking stick and I'm like, I don't need that. And then I get out and I'm like,
Mhm.
I really do need it. I'm gonna have to quit and go home because I can't queue without fainting.
Yeah, yeah. And are you fainting? I haven't ever fainted, actually.
I only have a couple of times, so but I get very close to it.
Yep. Mhm.
I don't allow myself to get to that point now. So more than
Yep.
5 minutes in a queue and I'm pretty much done. I start to feel a bit dizzy, I go a bit shaky, and then I'm like, yeah, I've got to go and sit down.
I'm 7 to 10 minutes per the doctor's office. The same thing. It's like in that you're saying queue, which is, like the line. When I get there and I'm like, oh no, the line, like you start thinking, oh no. And then you're looking around, is there a chair I can go sit in? And like sitting down on the floor might look a little odd. So yeah, it's.
And then of course, if you do people with POTS, if you do get to that point where you push yourself over that threshold where you go really shaky and tremory and you start to get to the point where you're about to faint or feel very faint, then that episode, even though you sit down or lay down, can go on for the rest of the day or at least a few hours. So it kind of really knocks your day off, doesn't it, if you let yourself get that bad?
It sure does. And it's so, I think that that part's hard because we look normal, right? Like if you look at us, you're like, oh, they look, and if you're not using a walker, you don't have, even if you had your can with the chair on it, like people are like, and at this point, I don't care what people think anymore. I'm old enough that I'm like, and this has been 2 years, so it's like, whatever. But it's more mere, like you're saying, like, oh, I feel okay. Like, I'm going to be okay to go out. And then you see that line and you're like, oh no, it's not going to work. How am I going to do this? And it's just, yeah, it's a challenge for sure.
Yeah. And that is all part of acceptance, isn't it? It's, I think I've accepted things and then I do something like that and go out without my walking stick seat when I probably should have taken it. And I think, yeah, perhaps I haven't quite accepted all of this yet.
Yeah, me too. The same thing. I do the same thing. And I'm pretty sure the teenagers don't love when I'm bringing a walker or a wheelchair at this point. There's my mom, like, and then to get up and down. I think it makes you realize that if I think about myself, all the judging I've done in the past, like, oh, that person has a handicap placard, but look, they look like they're walking fine. And I'm like, well, that's me now. Like, I may look like I'm walking fine into the store, but like, I might not be able to get back out of the store. Like, and I use those carts in the store that we have here, unless it's a smaller store, but it's like, I gotta have my cart closer because of exactly what you're saying. So, or if I'm using the walker. If I'm using the walker, I guess people don't, look at you funny, but all the judging, it goes back to team humanity, all the judging that we do of one another when it's like, we need to understand that people are all doing the best that they can all the time. And sometimes the best is needing a walker. Sometimes the best is brushing your teeth for the day and climbing back into bed, right? And even though, I just know I'm guilty from the past of judging others, thinking like, oh, they could push through. Like, why aren't they trying harder? And now knowing that pushing through does the opposite for us. Like you said, if you get to that point, it's going to send you down probably for the rest of the day because you used up all that energy. So I've kind of got very good at faking looking normal.
Mainly because, getting up and putting some makeup on and, 2 years on is making me feel more normal on the outside. It's good for my mental health to kind of get up, do my hair, put some makeup on. Well, I do all that in bed while I'm getting over my dizziness. So the mornings I'm still quite dizzy in the mornings, and it takes me a couple of hours to be able to get out of bed. But yeah, I'm sitting here now and my legs are buzzing right up to my waist. So like my hands are buzzing a bit. The tinnitus is kind of pulsing, my eyelids twitching. You can't see it on camera, but it is. There's, even though we look normal, there are things still going on, aren't there?
Next time we should just take this thing laying down on the couch, like is our real life. It's true about sitting up too for me, and like tinnitus too. It's just screaming right now. For some reason it's louder, but like sitting up, I get so stiff. Like it starts from the back of my neck and goes down my spine, and it's just like a big, stiff, painful mess. And it's the end of the day for you, even though it's the beginning of the day. And as the day wears on, like the feet burning and tingling gets worse. And you just learn to normalize these things, but they're all consuming energy from you. And it's not easy. I
No.
would not wish this on anyone. And it breaks my heart when it's like these very young people who are getting hit with this. And I mean, I'm not old yet, but I'm more midlife, and I wish this, I don't know. I just feel lucky for the time I had before this happened to me. And I just hate that so many young people are stuck in bed. It's just heartbreaking.
Yeah, it is. It is. It must be really difficult for them.
Yeah.
You know, because it is completely life changing, isn't it? And when you're young, you want to do everything all at once, don't you? You want to go and see your friends, and you want to go to work, and you want to go out in your car, and you want to go to, the cinema or the concerts, and you've got so many plans that you've got in your head that you want to do, and then you find yourself in this situation. It must be very difficult, because like you, I'm not old. I don't think I'm old, but I'm 40. I'll be 45 this year. And I had quite a good life in the last 10-15 years. I did a lot of the things that I wanted to on my virtual bucket list that I never wrote down, but I did a lot of traveling and saw a lot of places and did a lot of things I wanted to do. So I feel really grateful that I got to do those when I could, because you never know what is around the corner, do you?
No.
You've got to do these things while you can. So yeah, like you, I do feel very sorry for the younger ones.
Yeah, it's interesting you say the traveling. My family and I tried to get to all 50 states as a family. And we did, thankfully, in 2020 before this happened to me, because the way we were traveling, there's no way I could have kept up with that, or it would have been dampered by the whole experience of mom in a wheelchair. So thankfully we got to all 50 states before that happened. But thinking about like how I feel sometimes, like just jealous of other able-bodied people. I'll look at them, like somebody maybe standing in a line, and you're like, look, that person's able to stand in a line or stand over there and talk to somebody. And anytime like I start talking to somebody and I'm standing up, I'm always like, oh shoot, where is there a chair and how long is this gonna last? Oh, you're on mute. I missed it. Yeah.
Sorry, that was my dog.
Oh, it was your dog.
Yeah, I muted because my dog was barking. No, I was just going to say, when I'm in a queue, I look at my watch, because I'm like, or if I'm talking to someone, bump into someone, I look at my watch and I think, right, I've got about 5 minutes here before I start to get symptomatic.
Exactly. And I feel like it's even shorter if you're out in a more public space versus like, say, in your front yard. I'm like, if there's more input coming from whatever sounds, noises, smells, for your autonomic nervous system to process, like it's shorter, it's faster, and that's a bummer, isn't it? But yeah, you're like, okay, I got 5 minutes, or I'm going to be sitting down on the ground like, and I'll just explain why, even though it's kind of odd. But yeah, just kind of that jealousy of, shoot, look at that person over there, what they can do that I can't do. But again, team humanity, we don't also know, even though they're able-bodied, maybe they're dealing with X, Y, or Z from, maybe they lost somebody they love or lost their job. Like, again, like if we can just open up and see each other, to be human is to suffer. Everybody suffers. That's part of the human experience, and the way we suffer is different, and it's not it shouldn't be on a comparison spectrum, really. It's just your journey versus my journey versus somebody who's able-bodied or has a lot of money, or I don't know. It's just all different, and we all have our challenges. And I wish and hope we can make kindness contagious and spread truth, and to the being censored. We just need to we should be allowed to have a voice. And when you silence those, I think there's a group called Silence Survivors too. When you silence anyone, you make them isolated. And when you isolate them, we as human beings need community. And to break up the communities that we have is really, really criminal, I think.
Yeah, agreed. Before we go, I just want to ask you, talking about challenges, I want to ask you about the triathlon that's happening.
Oh yeah. So I used to do this YWCA triathlon, like I think 10 years in a row. I'm pretty sure I did it 10 years in a row. And last year, a supporter, Lori, she did it for me, and we crossed the finish line together. They have like a little chute. I didn't do it. She did it. And then they have a chute at the end where you can go through and connect with your person who did the race and run across together. For me, that used to always be my husband and kids that would like run across with me at the end after I finished. This year, I think we have 12 people, and then the whole triathlon got full, and we couldn't add more people, and I think there were 3 more that were going to join. So a total of 15 supporters of the vaccine injured that are going to do the race on our behalf. And I know I'm planning on crossing the finish line with at least one racer, and then there's another person who was also very active here in Minnesota. She's also going to cross the finish line. So they all have our shirts. We're going to have supporters too, like hopefully other injured, if they're feeling well that day, can come out and cheer on the 12 women who are doing the triathlon on behalf of us, which I think is super cool. It's so
really
heartwarming. Again, this is pulling together people really from all walks of life, all political sides, all religious sides, like very different people who are just pulling together, not with an agenda, but in straight up love and support. And I personally believe that's where we win every time, when we come together in love and support. We're allowed to be angry. I'm sure shoot angry that 2 years later, I can't do that triathlon, but maybe I can do a part of it, the biking part, next year only. We'll see. I don't know again. But just the coming together of love is the coolest thing. It's the thing that gives me hope, and hope that team humanity can just really spread.